Nobody reminded me.
I was just about to say it.
So on the recording, everybody missed my great introduction, but that's your tough luck for not having been here live. And so, John and Claudia, I'm going to hand it over to you. Those of you who are not speaking, probably best to mute yourself so we don't have a background noise. But feel free to ask questions and unmute yourself if you have a question. So go, take it away.
Sure.
Great.
So John and I, just to give everyone a heads up, we are going to be sharing slides, and as a result of sharing the slides, we are going to take off the video for us.
All right, we are sharing.
Fantastic. Well, my name is Claudia Fernandes, and I am an associate research scientist at the Yale School of Medicine, as well as the associate director at the Play to Prevent Lab at Yale. Prior to this role, I was a teacher, bilingual school counselor, and then a founding member of leadership as part of a new school in Newark, New Jersey, where I oversaw school climate initiatives. In my current role at the Play to Prevent Lab, I focus on designing, developing, and evaluating video game interventions to improve adolescent mental health and wellness. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in private practice. And I'll let John introduce himself.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm John Joy, and we're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Been in the video game industry for about 9 years. Past companies have included Telltale Games, Pandora, Apple, and Warner Brothers. And before gaming, many years ago, as a private school teacher, and coach in Westchester, New York, where I taught studio art and art history and coached basketball and tennis. Let's get, okay, so today, our hope for this evening's webinar is that by the end of it, you'll be able to, 1, identify strategies to use while collaborating on multidisciplinary teams, and 2, practice applying these strategies in a personal context.
So to understand why we created this tool and game, let's take a minute and go back to our high school years. Way back for some of us. Some of you may be moaning and groaning. Everyone's muted, so I can't hear it, but when you're thinking about your high school years, but maybe there are some smiles in there as well. So close your eyes. Take a minute to just breathe. In and out. You are 15 again. You arrive at your school. You're about to enter the building. Take a minute to scan your body here. Now walk inside your school. What did you feel right there? This thing that you're envisioning and feeling, this is school climate. Now open your eyes. We all had different experiences and feelings in this activity. So according to the National School Climate Center, school climate is the quality and character of school life. It is how every single person, from the students to the teachers to the families, how every single person who steps foot inside the school experiences it. It is essentially the vibe, the pulse, the feel, the personality of one school. A positive school climate fosters youth development and learning. So school climate is linked to improvements in academic achievement, attendance, and self-esteem. Therefore, promoting a positive school climate can have enormous benefits for students as well as the school as a whole. Additionally, school climate is essential in order to engage youth, and engaging youth, as with all of our video games, is an important focus of our work. The purpose of this specific project was to develop a school climate assessment tool that collected data from our students. Then we wanted to embed this tool into an interactive video game with intervention components. For the purpose of this webinar, John and I will focus on the development of our interactive video game with the intervention components.
Okay, so I'm going to give a quick rundown of the game development process from the development perspective. So on this project, we were faced with the following task. We had to convert a validated assessment survey into a digital format, then build a game around the thought record, which is a fundamental tool used in cognitive behavioral therapy, and then tie all of this to a back end that could not only track the students' data throughout the school year, but also be flexible enough to allow Yale to update and analyze data independently. So, in the end, it would all culminate into an interactive video game that's engaging, empowering, and provides useful data to schools and researchers. So yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to put into an experience. So as you can imagine, this was no small task, and certainly one that required optimal teamwork for us to pull off successfully. And really it boils down to, we knew we had to deliver an engaging digital survey that students would fully complete, because that was the core of the assessment tool. And so the team started with brainstorming. We took digital surveys from leading companies like Office Vibe and SurveyMonkey, and we started to talk through the qualities that seem to separate a good survey from a bad survey. This really helped us narrow down what seemed to be the main question at hand. What gameplay mechanic could we utilize that would be as clear and transparent as possible, encourage completion, and provide meaningful feedback? The advantage on this project is that we knew our market, and a lot of times you don't. So the good thing about that, when you know your market, is that you can look to the UX trends that are being used by that market. Quick side note, UX means user experience, and that is the way the user interacts with a game or app. Basically, you can think of it as ease of use. So with our market, which are teenagers, we knew that swiping is kind of the gold standard. They're tech savvy, they're app savvy, and they kind of live and breathe mobile apps and modern UX. So swiping is probably the primary way that teenagers are going to interact with and sift through tons of digital content quickly on a mobile device. So we decided to leverage it to our advantage. But we came up with the swipe, couldn't really rest on our laurels and celebrate for too long until we hit our next hurdle. So in addition to the survey, we had to do the interactive game component. And with our tight schedule, we couldn't float multiple gameplay mechanics. And we were kind of all in on the swipe for the story, for the survey. So the thing we had to figure out was, could swiping so simply work for an interactive story game too? And again, we turned outwards in our brainstorming, looking for examples of games that might have this component, and we came across Reigns, which is a PC and mobile game that is wildly successful. It was released in 2016. It sold over 2 million copies, has a wide audience, has spawned 2 sequels, and you control the reign of a ruler in your kingdom by only swiping left or right. So knowing this, we figured we could give it a shot. And figured we could talk about how the swiping works, but the best way to show that is just to see it in action. So for the basic survey, you have 3 simple interactions. You can swipe right to answer yes, you can swipe left to answer no, and you can swipe up if it's not applicable. Now, there's one thing with the survey where we kind of hit a snag, and that's the survey included what are called Likert questions, which are ones where the answers are on a spectrum of if you strongly disagree, mildly disagree, agree, or strongly agree. And we couldn't really find a way where swiping could translate easily. So we created a different approach for Likert questions. And it's a quick little 4-button horizontal spread where you can click on the answer that makes sense to you. And for us, this interface is still quick, it's still simple, so we figured it's okay. And then finally, for just getting around the application, we just have good old-fashioned tap and scroll, which is kind of what you do on mobile apps. And this lets you pick the different sections of the survey or the game and see your progress throughout the product.
Awesome, thank you, John. So as John mentioned, we needed to use the same swiping mechanic in building out the narratives. So we used a story game approach where players were able to navigate through relevant and relatable stories. These stories are short narratives that modeled how to restructure negative automatic thoughts, an intervention that I will discuss shortly. The player in this situation, the player is allowed limited agency to affect the outcome of the story. And this reason is because our goal was to model the process of restructuring thoughts in different situations. Prompts for deep thinking, planning, and reflecting are woven into the narrative, as well as a real life activity serving as a call to action. And I think the slide just went back accidentally.
There we go.
So you can go to the next one.
There we go.
Awesome. No worries. So in order to unlock the mini games, all survey questions first had to be answered. Once the questions were answered, you then get to this page where we had 5 different mini games with 1 tutorial, think it through, to model how to approach the intervention. The mini games target 5 major categories as informed by research and determined by the National School Climate Center. They are environment, which is physical surroundings, relationships, which is social support, support for learning, which is academic support, social media, which is online behaviors, and safety, which is emotional and physical security. The content of each minigame was informed by focus groups with teens who shared salient themes related to these categories. So we created a mnemonic device in the form of an adapted thought record. And so I'm not sure if we, thought records are tools or strategies to assist a person in restructuring negative automatic thoughts. Our goal was to teach skills. So we wanted to teach skills in linking the emotions and thoughts, the heart and the brain, creating meaning from thought, and then developing a more balanced thought with evidence. And shortly, John is going to walk through those steps and show one of our mini games to show how that was done in the mini, to show you, what was done. Each mini game threaded the same concept, this adapted thought record, into relevant narratives and storylines shared by high school students in our focus groups. So, meaning making, this is what made it very unique. We adapted our thought record to include a step on meaning making. This was known as the Knowit step, right? And it allows the player to reflect on potential motives that default into negative automatic thoughts. This step was guided by WISE interventions, which use theory and research-based techniques to change the meaning people make about themselves. The goal of WISE interventions, and this is what makes this thought record an adapted thought record, is that the WISE interventions help identify a self-defeating cycle and then change it into an enhancing cycle. There are 3 basic motives in meaning making. They are the need to understand yourself and others, the need for self-integrity, and the need to belong. For this reason, we then included a call to action at the end of Think It Through. Players had the option to complete a real-life activity addressing the meaning they made from each story.
All right. I will now do a run through. So we had the mini games that were based on all the dimensions, and we'll do a run through of one of them, which is social media. So to begin, the player would scroll down to the game section at the bottom of the survey, and they would tap on social media. You can see by the UI that it hasn't been completed because it's blue, and underneath it says unresolved. And then a quick fun fact about this product is that the stories actually sort based on the results of the student survey. So the topics that a student needs the most help with will sort to the top accordingly. And then all the way down to the story where they may not need as much help, that will be listed last. So once they tap on the story, they're brought to the first screen of the game. And this is kind of the setup to the story. On this one, it says, Tia posted a picture of herself to her feed. She was really excited about it, but when she checked an hour later, it hardly had any likes. So her options are swipe to continue, so we are going to do that. Next up, we're now on the first of those 3 steps where we link emotion to thought. So the text says, she keeps checking back on the post. Her mind is racing to figure out why it's not getting likes. A few minutes later, the post has no new likes, so Tia takes the picture down. I'll also guess that this isn't a teenage-only issue, and that likely many adults and maybe people on this call have felt this way too as they've interacted with social media. So again, we will swipe in either direction to continue and keep going with the narrative. So this is now step 2 of linking the emotion to thought. Tia is hurt and upset about the lack of attention her picture got. She's starting to doubt herself. So far, the choices have been linear, with left or right swiping offering the same option to continue. And that notice now, and just a quick call out to the art, that even though it's largely abstracted, you can still make out the figures in the narrative, and you can see that the art is building on that feeling of isolation with the dark blue component kind of squeezing the figure down. So with the next slide, we're going to start moving into the ability for you to make choices within the narrative. So this is the 3rd and final step of linking emotion to thought. We're presented with our first choice. So to help Tia feel better, you need to know what she's telling herself to feel upset. What's going through her head? First, I'm going to, in the little GIF, you can see that I checked to the right, and the choice says, nobody cares about her. And then I'm going to quickly check the left option. Her friends stopped liking her. I'm going to go with the left choice. Her friends stopped liking her. So now let's create meaning from that thought. What would it mean to Tia if she thought that her friends stopped liking her? How would she interpret this? Again, we have 2 different responses we can choose from. The left option is she would feel unvalued and unloved. The right option is she would feel rejected. I'm going to go with unvalued and unloved, and I'm going to swipe left. So now we have linked the emotion to a thought, and created meaning from it, so we can develop a more balanced thought with evidence. What could she tell herself that would change the way she's thinking? We're going to review both options. So the right choice is she's respected by the people around her. And the left choice is her friends will stick with her. After a little indecision, you can see in my GIF, I decided to swipe right and go with she's respected by the people around her. We can now practice mastering it. How could Tia know that she's respected? What evidence does she have? Let's see, her profile has a lot of followers, or her classmates pay attention when she talks. I'm gonna go with her profile has a lot of followers and swipe left. All right, so this is where we have a branch in the narrative. Looks like the option I selected maybe wasn't the most helpful evidence to help Tia. So I'm presented with this screen and it says, Tia doesn't feel any better thinking about her followers. She's upset right now and they're not doing anything to help. Try something different to help Tia. So I'd like to learn some more. So I'm gonna swipe right. So I'm presented with this beneficial kind of pro tip. And it says, did you know appreciating people and things makes you more likely to be happy, to be more hopeful, and to get higher grades? Try again to help Tia. So even though, and this is an interesting thing coming from a gaming background, even though I kind of picked the suboptimal response, we're presenting the information in a positive way and giving kind of positive next steps so that I'm enticed to make better decisions in the future. It doesn't feel like I'm being lectured or that it's punitive. So feeling that, I want to give it another shot and see if I can choose different evidence, I'm gonna go back and try again. So it takes me back to that initial branch at master it. And this time I'm gonna say her classmates pay attention when she talks. Let's see where this takes me. All right, so the path branched and I get to connect this evidence to Tia's balanced thought in order to reinforce it. So after thinking it through, Tia knows that even though her post didn't get many likes, she's valued because her friends support her with their words and actions, or the other option is her other posts have tons of likes. And as you can see, this slide seems to also lead to a teachable moment based on what answer I'm going to select. And I'm going to choose the one her friends support her with words and actions and swipe left. So there we go. I get to see how the balanced thought allows Tia to move forward. With a little help, Tia is able to stop thinking about the post and move on with her day. She goes out to dinner with her dad. And I'm just going to swipe to continue. Everybody has ups and downs, and they can always use support when they're down. Continue to see an example activity that might help you or others in that situation. So I'm going to check out this activity, and it says, try this sometime. Post 3 pictures on social media of people or things that make you feel valued or loved. Share why they make you feel that way. So I can either say done and just call it a day and move on, or choose no thanks, and I'm going to choose no thanks and swipe right. So it says, if that activity doesn't work for you, there will be resources and more things to try after finishing the stories. So that shows that that now I know, kind of, even though I didn't want to try the activity right now, there'll be more support at the end of the game. So that kind of gives me a little sneak into what's to come. So I'm going to swipe, and I get a nice, again, you get that gold banner at the top. So I get nice reinforcement that I just finished a chunk of content. And it feels good. I've learned those lessons. I even made a little mistake, but it connected me back so I could kind of see the thread to the end. And I think I'm going to swipe to return to the chapter and maybe try another story if I have time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. So right now, John and I are going to share a document, a link to Google Drive that will take you to a document where we're going to do an individual activity, and I'm going to walk you through it. And then after we do the individual activity, we're actually going to open it up for discussion and sharing and have an opportunity to really think about how that experience was for you, as well as just think about the steps of the application of Think It Through. So just to let you know, in the document, what we'll have you do is take a moment, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, to provide an example of a time where you experienced a negative automatic thought. And yep, okay, great. Thanks, John, for sharing.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm going to give everyone a couple of seconds to get to that document, and you can just go to the chats.
Yeah, just posted it in the chat window.
And when we go to the document, it's a Word file. So do you want us to like open it in Google Docs and edit it there, or do you want us to think about it?
Whatever makes the most sense for you. I think some people like to download it as a Word, because it should be, you should download it into Word so that everyone's not opening up the same document and filling it out together. Fill it out on your own. So if you can, download it into Word and then fill it out in Word, and then we'll open it up for discussion and sharing it and sharing everyone's experience. But first, I'll walk through it with everyone as well. So, take about a minute or two, maybe like 90 seconds right now, and share that experience in the top section. Don't move to the chart below. I'll walk you through those directions as well, but just take, like I said, 90 seconds, and I'll let you know when the 90 seconds is up. So you have about 30 seconds to finish that thought. I'll let you know when the time is up. Okay, so now thinking about this specific example, I want you to move to the chart below where it says, in the chart below, apply Think It Through to your thought and fill out the right column. We're not going to fill it out. I want to prompt, so don't jump in right away. Just go slowly, because a lot of this stuff also takes time, and a thought record also takes a lot of practice. So if some of you are feeling like it's a little hard, totally makes sense, because this stuff is really challenging. We're essentially challenging our thought patterns that have become so automatic. So using the 3 steps outlined, let's start by connecting the thought to the emotion. So fill out that section for Feel It, Name It, and Sync It. And some of the questions that you can ask yourself are, what sensations do you feel in your body? Are your hands sweaty? Are your hands trembling? Is your heart racing? Are you having difficulty breathing? Another thing is, what emotion do you feel? A lot of people have difficulty labeling or an emotion, thinking of what the emotion is that they're feeling in that moment, and you have to name it to tame it. So are you happy, sad, nervous, disappointed? And then lastly, what are you telling yourself? So after you acknowledge that there's a sensation that you're feeling, right, that causes some discomfort, and you are connecting an emotion to these sensations, and you're thinking about what you're telling yourself that is connected to it, are you saying, I'm not going to do a good job of it, or I'm going to embarrass myself, I'm going to disappoint everyone? So think about that, and just take about 30 seconds to fill that part out. So now let's move to the Knowit stage. And remember, the Knowit stage is the part where we're making meaning from this thought, right? So what are you trying to understand about yourself? So after you've identified what you're telling yourself, what are you trying to understand about yourself, about others? Or does what you're trying to tell yourself stem from a lack of adequacy, that you're not good enough, right? Or does the meaning stem from feeling a lack of belonging or connected to others? So sit and think about that. I'll give you guys about 45 seconds to fill out that. And really think about that one, because that's really the meat of this whole intervention and this whole process. And now let's develop a more balanced thought with evidence, right? So now that you've created meaning from the thought that you're telling yourself, what could you tell yourself instead? And sometimes it's easier to give a friend good advice. So if you put yourself in the position of thinking about a friend who maybe was feeling this way, what would you tell your friend who's feeling this way to help them feel better instead? And with that, provide evidence for your friend. You're connected because you serve, or you're valued because you serve on student government and you use your voice, you volunteer, you're active in the school community. Think about things that prove what you're telling, that negative automatic thought. Think about things that prove that thought pattern wrong. I'm going to give you guys about 30 more seconds. You have about 10 seconds to just wrap up that final thought. Okay. now we're going to move to sharing it with the group.
So you're looking for a volunteer to share?
Yes. So I'm going to unmute my video. So it's less intimidating. So if anyone wants to go first, you could share maybe the negative thought, or if someone, just to begin with, if they want to give a quick thought of how the exercise went for them, if they thought it was harder than expected, easier. And then from there, we could start with an example that someone came up with. And you can talk or chat, whichever's more comfortable for you.
So I mean, you can walk me through it if you'd like. I can volunteer first.
Sure. Sure. So you can either share your responses, or if you feel more comfortable, you can share your experience of going through the step-by-step process.
So I could share what I wrote down. I mean, do you want to know the event first?
Sure.
The specific event? Well, so I'm helping some people design a course for high school kids, or a program for high school kids to get them to think more about what they're going to be doing after high school, starting in 9th grade. It's a 4-year program, and we've been talking about making it like game-like or gamified. And so we came up with, a bunch of us came up with what we thought were some really good terms, that the 4-year thing was a quest, and that each year they were going to have a mission, and during the mission they were going to be pursuing various paths, and then during the paths they were going to have challenges. And the people behind it says, yes, we want you to make it fun, but we want you to use the terms course, modules, assessments, instead of game-like terms. And it was like, so that was the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought was really anger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like, well, why do they, you know, why are they asking me then to make it game-like if all they're going to be doing is doing this exactly like a textbook or a school is? The purpose, I thought, was to make this fun for the kids. So, and I guess it came from, let's see, you know, so I guess, you know, and that's, so that's what that's the emotion and what I was telling myself. So I guess the meaning was that if this is what's going to happen from now on, then we're not going to end up with a fun experience for kids, or a product that kids really like. That was kind of the meaning. And then I guess develop a more balanced thought was that, well, there is other evidence that we will produce a good product because we produced great products in the past, and that the names for the different parts is not really the most important part of the course development. It was just something that we thought was cool. That they really do have to value me because they're paying a lot of money for my advice. And that my job isn't really what to tell them what to do, but it's to open their eyes to more possibilities. So that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So when you restructured that not negative automatic thought pattern, did you notice any shift in how you felt about the situation or how you felt in general?
So the interesting thing is that I'm as much recounting what I myself went through about 2 hours ago when this happened. So I kind of walked myself through all these steps. So yes, when I first got the notice that, or the, you know, in the conversation, this is what we want to do. And then, you know, I had the feeling, but then I kind of walked myself out of being down and became more resourceful as a result of reframing it the way that third box, you know, the third description went. So yes, it wasn't so much doing it through right now from this Word document, but it was the same, it was that process.
Great. Thank you so much. Now I see a comment from Amna. Amna, thank you. So it says, it looked difficult, but the walking through made easy. Do you have any other additional comments or thoughts you wanted to share from your own experience? Oh. Okay. And how about anyone else? Would anyone else like to share? You can walk us through your steps, or you can just share your overall experience in the process.
Well, and I'm curious, when kids went through this, is this similar to what the kids went through also?
So they went through what John showed you.
Okay.
So that was the step in the process that John shared through the game. But showing you the back end of what this whole what the game experience is a very different experience from this one. Mm-hmm. The game, and that's which I'll share, we're intending to pilot the game in the fall, where we'll learn about the usability, the feasibility, and also see if some of our targeted constructs, we'll look at them to see how we'll evaluate those, to see if what we targeted was accomplished. Mm-hmm.
I see Amna has another comment, which is interesting also, that she found it practical and effective. And, it's funny, I'm looking at her comment, and she says, especially about advising a friend rather than saying what you would tell yourself. And I could really see walking family members or like nieces, nephews, whatever, through this process, even more than walking myself through. Although, the process is very helpful for thinking about myself as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's working with Schell. That was something that we intentionally did in the game, was that we made it be about another person. Right? It's much easier to give advice sometimes than to think about what advice I should take. And so we created these mini games based off of students who were experiencing different challenges or difficulties that were relevant from our focus groups that students shared in the focus groups that we conducted, about, some of the day-to-day encounters. So we made it about someone else, and what advice would you give that person for that exact reason?
Do you think you could then collapse it back to the person thinking about themselves also? Or maybe you don't even have to. Maybe the fact that they're giving the advice to somebody else would, in the game is fine. But my thought was, well, okay, I'm giving this to other people, but then how do you redirect them back to them? Or do you need to redirect them back to themselves so that they say, oh, something, I need this advice too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the whole premise is on essentially learning the steps so that you can apply it to yourself at some point. And that's the whole process of learning these steps, so that then when you encounter it, you can say, oh, wait, I just gave Tia advice on what to do and how to navigate those steps. I'm going to now take that same advice. That's our goal, and that's our hope, is that the students learn the steps to go through the process. And thank you, Amna, for your comments. We appreciate it.
And then, and Al's comment also, that way sounds more fun.
Which way will be providing for the advising a friend, just to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah, and also on the mobile app, because me answering the questions on the Word document, right now, I'm feeling my heart is racing, and I feel like a panic attack coming on just answering those questions.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, no, that's such a great point. And, to John's point earlier in the conversation or in the discussion, it was, meeting teens where they're at and using, what they're accustomed to and how they're accustomed to engaging. And again, this is to, you know, school climate assessments are usually conducted through just paper surveys. And so this was transitioning it into a digital experience with intervention components. So we collect the data in the beginning, and then these interventions ideally encourage teens to take action and develop skills in order to empower themselves and take action.
And the nice thing too is at the end of each story, there is the external prompt of, even though they're going through a thought record with someone else's story, that they still have that prompt of, like how they said, you know, post people that are important to you on social media, that you are getting little takeaways of kind of how to spin the narrative in a more positive light with a real world action. Because again, if you want to have that balance of, like, if it's all just in app, you know, you may not take the next step to apply it in the real world. So we wanted to bridge that gap of the thought record modeled, and then you get to take at least some action in the real world to start to test out those behaviors on your own.
Yeah, and Amna, thank you for that question. Amna asks, is there any demo available for us to try the game, or is it available in the full version? So unless anybody has any other final wants to share out, we can move to the next slide where I will address those two questions. So going once, going twice. All right.
I think we're gonna.
Well, while you're transitioning, I want to say this was a really cool exercise.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I'm going to quickly stop sharing.
Our teams worked very well together, and I think it was evident in the product. You know, and that's where, you know, at the end, we have some tips and strategies, suggested strategies, and working on multidisciplinary teams that we wrote for as a blog post as part of Mitch's website, which John will talk about.
Yes. Okay. And we're back.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, John. So as with all of our games at the Play Prevent Lab, evaluation is a key part of the process. So we are currently preparing to pilot the entire game, well, the tool and the game in the fall with 60 students, high school students. And so unfortunately, as a result, we do not have a demo available, nor do we have a full version of the game available to play. And when we pilot the game, what we'll be looking at, we'll be looking at targeted constructs, you know, looking at reappraisal, like the process of restructuring thoughts if students learned that, the process of seeing if they learned or increased their self-efficacy. And then we'll also look into usability and feasibility of the game, because as we all know, a game can be fantastic, but if teens don't like it and they're not using it, what good is it? So another priority of our work together with Schell is that we want to ensure that our work is accessible. So we're continuing in this priority. We will continue to work with schools, community partners to support them with their school climate plans. And we certainly will continue to share this work, as well as the process that we shared today, with other researchers, gamers, clinicians, and educators in working toward a collective goal of promoting health and wellness in youth. So this presentation is, or discussion webinar is focused on the development. We hope that in the spring, we'll have something more to share with you guys on the results of the pilot study, which is really exciting to see. Fingers crossed, we hope to see some impact.
All right. So Yeah, in closing, we wanted to reinforce that kind of these strategies and tools that are being offered to students through this game to cope and advocate change can be just as beneficial for us to use as adults in the workplace, that there's no age cap on this, and kind of emotional regulation can be helpful in any stage of life. And also, like most things, practice is key. So that is kind of good for youth empowerment. It's also good for us. And that sort of is the conclusion to this presentation.
And yep.
Oh, you go.
well, we could both say. So, of course, this work can never be done without our incredible team of multidisciplinary members and partners, including, the Play to Prevent Lab, Schell Games, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and of course, a huge thank you to our partners at the Chan Zuckergerg Initiative for funding this important and impactful work. As you can see, there are many people listed who are part of this work, and truly I think the product speaks for itself because we had a lot of brains on it and a lot of thinking caps. It was around the clock with development with Schell Games, and it certainly was a very positive experience. And I think, practicing what we preach, encouraging open communication, all of those things really helped us create and build something that we're all proud of.
Did you all find when you were working together that you had to go through this, I guess it's 6-step process, or three big steps, the same way? It's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 6. There's 6 steps here, I guess, in the Word document. So did you find that you had to go through those also?
I think what ends up happening in general is that, we are all human, and, certainly there are triggers that sometimes, when you're in a stressful environment where you're on a tight time crunch and you're trying to get something out. And in fact, John had created a couple slides about this, and we knew we were already packed and couldn't unfortunately discuss it. But when there's a real, short time frame and you're really pushing things forward, and you're also, the other piece is that we are 2 very different organizations. Schell Games moves very fast. We are researchers. We like to sit and think and not make any decisions, and think more and not make any decisions, think more and not make any decisions. And Schell is just like move fast, break things, and let's keep it going. So I think part of that was, working together to find that, if I was feeling rushed or feeling, okay, we have to keep this moving, like syncing all of those feelings and reframing those, the rushing makes me feel, oh my gosh, we're not going to get this done correctly. And then it makes me feel, anxious, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's connected to my feeling of like my self-integrity, right? Wanting to produce good work. And then, reframing that this is part of the process, and we as a team have a track record of producing good work. And so, all of those steps. And so I could speak to that. John, I don't know if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I agree. So I feel like if you circumnavigate any of those steps, like if I'm feeling anxious and then I quickly go like, oh, I'm anxious, we better have a meeting or produce more documents, that may slow development down. So if I don't work through like, I'm anxious because we have an unclear, component to work out. So maybe I should go talk to an engineer. Like I may actually produce the wrong action on my end because I haven't thought through like what's behind that emotion, what's my thought, is there any evidence? And again, we had a short timeline, a lot of input, and a pretty kind of aggressive product to develop. So it being mismatched with emotions, or just, not being honest with every step of the way was gonna, you're probably gonna gum up the works as opposed to making it work more efficiently.
And I'm thinking in terms of schools, to the extent that people are teachers, and they start feeling, as we all do, anxious about things or angry about things, that internally going through this process may help them diffuse the situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
These are skills, and these are skills everyone can improve and work on. And even, some days I may be good at, using this tool and strategy, and some days, maybe I haven't had my lunch and I'm a little bit less, capable of following the strategy and the practice as well. But everyone, whether it's, a student or an adult or staff member, a school leader, can benefit from this work.
And to what extent is what you're going to be talking about at Serious Play different from what the webinar we covered in the webinar?
So it'll be pretty similar to this activity, just the development process and how we, how we worked together.
Mm-hmm.
So a similar process. John,
Good.
do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, agreed. I think we really want to kind of hammer home this process and kind of the way that it can be replicated in different venues and kind of for different outcomes. So even though it's simple, it's a thing that I think the simplicity can make people go like, oh, it seems kind of simple, so I won't do it. But if you do it and practice it, like, it can really have huge measurable results. It can have results for students. It can have huge results, again, like you were saying, for educators, for professionals. If you kind of learn to properly sort your feelings, emotions, and actions, it can have huge benefits.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks. Well, thank you for appearing. This was really fascinating. Do you have a closing thought that you want to leave people with?
We just had a couple of last, if you wanted to stay connected with us and with our teams, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Mm-hmm. You're very active on YouTube. So.
And then we have the information on Serious Play Conference, if anyone's interested and wants to come check us out at the Serious Play Conference in Montreal.
That should be great.
Yeah, and we did have a quick Google evaluation. We have some time open for questions if anyone had any questions they want. But since we're short on time, if you want to, you can put it in the eval that John is sharing.
Chat and get the link. So here, I'm gonna unshare to get the link to the survey, and then we'll post it.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, so there's quick ones. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, I unfortunately will not be at Serious Play, but hope to see you online or at another conference.
Great. Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for having us. This has been great. Even prepping for this webinar with John was very enjoyable. And we're just really thrilled to share our work and the steps in the process that went into building and developing it.
It really is fascinating. Thank you. Okay. Yep.
I was going to say, if anyone has any questions, we're happy to field like one or two.
Yeah, I'll leave things open for a few more minutes. Anybody? Good.
Okay, is my mic working?
Yep.
Okay. So when you're doing sort of the thought sort of recording, is there any empirical data that shows the mechanism in which you're sort of processing or recording those thoughts, whether it's using a pencil and paper versus swiping versus filling out on a keyboard, in a shared Google Doc, are there different impacts in sort of the way in which our minds associate that process of recording those thoughts? Is there one way that's more effective, or are they just different?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and that's a great question. To my knowledge, in the research, I don't know of anything that differentiates the process of doing the thought record, and if and how that has an impact on the way the process is done and the outcomes. But sometimes I think with the emergence of technology, sometimes research hasn't caught up, especially when we're using these digital tools. It hasn't caught up because research takes so much time to find out, if there's a shift or a change in it. But to my knowledge, I don't know of any research out there that has that information.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, we're at...
Okay.
Oh.
No, that was just me.
Oh.
Okay. Well, then, thank you, everybody. And hope to see you all at future Edchat Interactives and at conferences coming up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
TTFN.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.